Hello there, and welcome to our Mobilise webinar, How to Spot and Support an Unpaid Carer. I'm Claire Cook, I'm part of the team here at Mobilise, and I'm also a carer to my daughter who is 11 years old and has complex needs. I'm here today with my colleague Suzanne.
Hello there, I'm Head of Carer Support here at Mobilise. I'm also carer of 17 years for my husband who has young onset Parkinson's disease.
Wonderful. Now, before we get properly started, we want to share this statistic with you.
There we go.
So 48% of the UK population have taken on some level of care or support role since the pandemic. And this is really what has prompted us to prepare this webinar. You're now more likely than ever before to be supporting or working with an unpaid carer. And particularly those that have taken on caring roles since the pandemic are less likely to have realised that they are in a carer's role now. So we're going to go on and discuss what an unpaid carer looks like.
Yeah, so we're going to look at today a number of things. We're going to first of all talk about how to spot and identify a carer so we know what they look like, why that's so important, how and to open up a sensitive conversation around their needs, so some skills and tools you can use there, how to signpost them to services, and really just how to bring carers to the forefront of our minds.
Yes, so what is an unpaid carer? What we found at Mobilise is that it's become really helpful to talk about carers in two very broad categories. So we have a traditional carer, which myself and Suzanne might fall into this view. And we also have moments of care carers, which are people that perhaps have come around their caring role since the pandemic, when they started helping perhaps a family member that's shielding, and it started out as moments of care, and these have grown obviously as the pandemic and the time sort of passes. So starting with a traditional carer, they're more likely to be living with the person that they care for. Not always, but that's more likely. The person is likely to have a long-term or chronic illness or disability, and they are more likely to have come to you for support because of their caring role. Now, not all traditional carers recognise themselves as carers, or want to recognise themselves as carers. And this is stuff we talk about as we go along. But as an example, so I'm a mum, and for many years I didn't understand that I was also a carer. And I suppose looking back, I can see how much extra I don't like to say work, but stuff that I do as my daughter's carer. And she has full personal care needs and needs 24-hour support. Yeah, and Suzanne, you're probably in that kind of category as well.
That's a good way of looking at it, actually, is what are you doing on top of your normal role of mum or wife? It's those extra bits, I think, that make you a carer. But yeah, it took me 5-6 years of Matt's condition and getting support and things for him before I really even recognised that word was relevant to me. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then moving on to moments of care carers. So many of these, like I said, are new since the pandemic. And what started out as a favour, maybe getting the shopping or a phone call to check in on someone's well-being, has possibly grown over the months that have passed. And it's probably almost definitely still going in some capacity. So it's really important that we are including these carers when we are looking around to see who needs support, and the reasons for that we come on to. So how would you spot a moments of care, or what do moments of care look like?
Okay. Yeah, so somebody could be doing something like getting the shopping, prescriptions, maybe just helping someone to have the confidence to leave the house, phoning and visiting to provide emotional support, preparing meals, cleaning, a little bit of support with personal care. Maybe just the fact they're thinking about someone else's needs when they're planning their own day. They're not just worried about what's going on with themselves. And it's that question of, could that person cope without the support that this moments of care is offering?
Yeah, absolutely. And is anyone springing to mind as we go through this list? I mean, it may even be yourself watching this. You're like, and you realise that over the last few months you have been providing more and more care and support. And there comes a point where you may decide that actually you need to stop and think about how you sustain that going forwards.
Absolutely. And I think it's in order to sort of get familiar with these different types of carers, it'd be silly for us sitting here. We have our own caring roles, but we really wanted you to meet another carer and to hear about what caring is with her. So I chatted to Vanessa earlier today, who's part of our Mobilise community. So here's a little bit from Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. Lovely to see you. Thanks for coming to talk to us today. Let's just start off. Tell us a little bit about your caring role.
Well, my caring role started 11 years ago when my husband was assaulted, and he had various health issues that have stemmed from that. He's now got MS. He has lymphedema in both his lower limbs, and he's also on warfarin because he suffers from blood clots. But I also care for my 16-year-old daughter who's got learning difficulties as well. So I have a menagerie, I suppose, of caring to do.
Lots going on for you, but when did you first realise you were a carer?
I suppose it was when we eventually found out about the MS Society. And we got to speak to the MS specialist, and he said, "So you his carer?" And I said, "No, I'm his wife." "But you're his carer as well?" And I went, "No, I'm his wife." But in fairness, I still didn't call myself a carer even then. I think it was a lot longer after that I thought, well, yes, I probably am a carer as well as being his wife, you know. So it was quite some time after he was assaulted that the caring sort of triggered with me.
Yeah, and that makes me think all that time that you missed out on support for you, although there was support for your husband and your daughter, it's that support just for you. I guess it was all focused on them. And I know we've been chatting on Cuppers recently. Tell me about the extra caring roles you've taken on through lockdown.
Well, through lockdown, it became apparent that lots of people had to be shielded, you know, those that were over 70. Like my mother-in-law, she has COPD, she's over 70. So she wasn't allowed to go out. So I took on the role of doing her shopping. And then my neighbour, her husband was diagnosed with cancer just before lockdown started. Mm-hmm. She didn't really want to be going out to do shopping and things like that. So I took on their shopping role as well. And then my mother-in-law's neighbours, you know, they don't have family living anywhere near them. So I was getting bits and pieces. I tried to limit it to just one day a week, obviously for the stick to the guidelines and things. But I would be out for 3 hours that one day a week to do the shopping and then sort it all out to everybody and then deliver it to them, you know, so...
That's amazing. So you're both this traditional carer for your husband and your daughter, but also you've taken on this kind of moments of care role for other people as well. So I think, there's probably lots of people who have done that and haven't realised the impact it's had on them.
Definitely.
And thinking about identifying carers, what is it that people that might be in contact with carers can do? I'm thinking about people like your GP, the MS Society. What could they do to help carers out?
Well, they can signpost them to their local carers centre primarily. I mean, it was quite some time before we were signposted to the carers centre, and I think I would have benefited from that by being signposted quite early on in David's treatment of various bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But the GP or the specialists or even nurses, you know, you see nurses quite more regularly than you do the doctors. They could signpost them.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunities, aren't there? There's those moments where someone might spot a carer and it might not be the first person that signposts them. It might be a couple of people that say it and then you might do it. But yeah, great. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much just for sharing how things are from your point of view and giving us that little insight on things. Hope to chat soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, what a great example of what caring looks like, you know, really looks like, and all those moments of opportunity to signpost. And hopefully this webinar will go far and wide and raise awareness of those opportune moments to do so. So moving on, we want to spend a little bit of time just looking at some statistics to, I suppose, get home the real impact that caring can have, and the reason why it is so important that signposting is there for carers when they are ready to, take on support and access support. None of this may come as a surprise, or maybe it does. Many carers suffer with poor mental health and physical health, and access to breaks and rest can be very difficult for carers to access. There's a lot of financial hardship among the caring community because people have had to leave jobs and so the income's gone down. So not only particularly if you're caring for your husband, perhaps or wife, perhaps they've had to leave their job through an illness, and then you are now their carer and have left your job as well. So financial implications are commonplace. So the more visible we can make caring, the more opportunity we have to signpost a carer to support before they reach essentially breaking point. And we do have carers in our community that talk about their breaking point and having been there. This is a very real thing, and we would much rather stop people from getting to breaking point than help them build back from breaking point. And it's important to say, and not a nice topic, but in its extremities, a carer that isn't supported and looked after and nourished themselves can become neglectful, and in even worse cases, abuse can happen because the carer is not being looked after. So it's important that we mention that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what we're looking for here is organisations that can help carers to access support. And I think if you're going to help, it's good to know what some of the barriers are. As we heard from Vanessa and from both of us, not everyone identifies or wants to be called a carer. There are uncomfortable feelings or cultural barriers around taking on that name and that identity. It's just what we do. It's normal. It's expected of us in some cases. So we need to be aware of that. People can be embarrassed to admit that they need help, that they think they ought to be able to cope, and this is what they signed up for. Some people will feel quite ashamed or have feelings of inadequacy if they're struggling, or to admit that they're struggling. Many carers are, they've hit the ground running. Something happened. They're running on adrenaline and cortisol to get it all going. They're pushing down those feelings and they're doing I'm fine. I'll just get through this and we'll be fine. We'll just keep going. Some people don't want strangers poking their nose in, the idea of having somebody come and check in what you're doing or doing an assessment can feel very uncomfortable.
And I think that's a biggie actually, Suzanne. I think having to let people into your house or talk to people about your personal stuff is it's a big barrier for some people.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry.
Definitely. Sorry. Integrating outside there, live as always, these things happen. And also that feeling of letting down the person they're supporting, people sort of like, mum has said she just wants me to do it. Or when mum passed away, she said, oh, please just look after dad. That's really important to me. So people really feel they're letting someone down by asking for help or getting support for themselves. And also sometimes carers are just okay, actually, particularly those moments of carers. They're doing all right. It's all set up fine for now. But that's a great opportunity to set up good networks, to get informed and be signposted, because you've probably got the energy and the time to get those things set up well. So quite often people aren't necessarily struggling or in a disastrous situation, and that is also still a good opportunity to signpost for support as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's also important to note, and Suzanne touched on this just then, that when you open these conversations, you can be the trigger for some very uncomfortable negative emotions. Suzanne, you alluded to hitting the ground running and parking the emotions that may be there, the diagnosis, the shift in role from being a daughter to becoming the parent, essentially, if your parent, say, has dementia. So there's an awful lot of feelings that get almost boxed away because they're too big and too painful to look at. Sometimes they're even too difficult to label. I talk about, you know, my story of my daughter, and I realized there was a lot of grief there, which seemed crazy because she was still here, but there was a lot of grief about things she may never do. And I know from personal experience that you can just carry on and box these up, and then if someone comes along and tap, you know, and starts to just scratch a little bit, it's a floodgate that can get opened, and you need to be aware of that, because you may get blocked, you may get stopped, or you may be the catalyst for it all to come flooding out. I think our advice would be to be gentle and to be patient, and to just watch and listen.
Absolutely. And so I think, you know, let's help to skill people up if you're going to have a conversation with a carer, how to do it. So we put there carefully, gently. But, you know, don't let this stop you having a conversation with someone, you know, for fear of getting it wrong, but just be mindful of those things that we said. And I think there's no right or wrong, but, you know, kind of choosing the moment can be helpful, but sometimes just it might take multiple people to signpost that might have helped things. So don't worry if, you know, they didn't go with you. It might take a few little reminders and a bit of encouragement, but always start with something positive. You know, start with that. You're doing a phenomenal job. It's a really tricky situation. And, you know, that this could be a real good opening situation. So, yes.
Yeah, I think
be mindful of that. Start positive. Claire, you've had a bit of a kind of a funny experience where people haven't always started.
Yeah. So I think you're right, Suzanne. I think acknowledging it is great, but in a positive way. And I think it's probably helpful to share a few ways that perhaps aren't helpful. You know, I experience a lot of, or you look tired, which I am a lot of the time, but it's just reinforcing something. And I might have, you know, think I was looking all right that day, and you go out and the first thing you get is, oh, you look tired. And it's meant to be, you know, empathetic and understanding of your situation, but it just, you go, oh. Or, you know, that I don't know how you do that, I couldn't do that. Again, just reinforcing that actually when people are watching you, your life looks hard. And actually as carers, we spend a lot of time, you know, this is our lives and we love our lives, but it's acknowledging it, but in a positive way, not in a way that reinforces the tough stuff. So, and I think just being mindful of that is helpful.
Definitely. And I think with everything we've just heard, people might already have somebody specific in mind that they're thinking, oh, I could talk to them, or how should I talk to them? So yeah, do, absolutely. Few tips here, again, sort of skilling you up to be a really great support for carers. Be a good listener. You probably don't have all the answers. You know, sharing your own experience isn't always appropriate. Just be a good listener and be there for them. Remember the impact of your words and how you're framing things, as we've said. And number one thing, you know, you're not alone in there. Signpost them to their local carer centre. That is so often the gateway to all sorts of different support and referrals. I think those are the key things. Tell them to make sure their GP knows they're a carer and signpost them to their local carer centre. And that will open up lots of other support for them. They'll take good care of them, even if they're not in current urgent need. Just being on their register, knowing what's there, being in touch, it means they'll be scooped up when things are available. And also, obviously with Mobilise, hopefully we fit together really well with what the local carer centres offers, that there's online support there that's available for them 24 hours a day as well.
Absolutely. And if you don't know who your local carer centre is, hopefully you've been sent this by your local carer centre. But if you don't know, drop us a line and we can help you find out. We may already be working with them. So, yeah, the next question. So knowing all of this, what will you do next? Have you got any tweaks in your mind about the way you do things now that could help you with identifying carers? We've had organisations that we've worked with before where we've delivered this content that now use this content as part of their training for new staff. Now they're not a company, an organisation that works with carers per se, but they work in the community. And so part of their induction training now is to have a piece about carers. So that's one really fantastic, simple way, you know, you could upskill your workforce and your volunteers. But to give you some more ideas, earlier today I spent some time chatting to Julia from Elfrida Rathbone in Camden, who are another outreach organisation, and here's what she had to say about the information you've just heard.
Here we go.
Hi there, Julia.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, thank you so much for finding the time to chat to us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Before we get started, would you like to tell us a bit about your organisation?
Yeah, so Elfrida Rathbone Camden, we're a charity organization, and we're based in Kentish Town in London. And we've worked here in the community for over 30 years. So we work, we have family services programs, we have creative therapy. We also run a college organization called Leighton College, working with young adults with learning difficulties.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. Now, a few months ago, I had the pleasure of coming along to one of your team meetings where I ran through essentially what we've been talking about in this webinar, which is, how to spot and to support an unpaid carer. And I really just wanted to pick up with you to find out how useful that information was and how it's shaped and used, in your day-to-day work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the family services team at our organization has really greatly benefited from your guidance around spotting the unidentified carers we work with. Mm-hmm. And we're able to we're also able to not only look out for people in the community carrying out acts of caring for family members, and for members in the local community, but we're also now able to recognize that there are those out there that don't identify as carers.
Yes. Yeah,
which has been really useful. So having the tools to which you have with your guidance, when we've been able to do that, to recognize it and to support them in the best way with those tools and skills has been vital.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's so lovely to hear. And it is really, especially those carers that haven't recognized themselves in that role as yet. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much for taking the time to share that with us. And we will stay in touch and look forward to working with you in the future.
Absolutely, Claire. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's great to hear from Julia. Thank you for listening, for watching, and for hopefully sharing this webinar with your contacts. We hope that you feel empowered to have conversations with carers in your network and to reach out to your carer or support organisation in your area to build a really sort of supportive web to catch those carers and support them. So just by watching this, you are helping us to raise the visibility of unpaid carers and the support they need, and we are very grateful. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been really nice to have this space to talk to you about this, and please do share this video with other people that you think would find it useful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye now.